Hi, Nathan. Welcome to the show.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me here.
Wow, my pleasure. You've written one very interesting book, The Sapien Empire. Sounds really intriguing, and we're going to definitely get to that. First of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, some backstory as to who you are?
Hi everyone. I'm Nathan Ogloff, and I'm 39 years old, which sounds a little odd to say, but we're not getting any younger. I've had a fascination with story building and creating these really rich, intricate worlds that people can just get obsessed about and dive right into and just get lost within. And this happened at around fourth or fifth grade when I thought I was going to be an architect or an engineer, and then I got into contact with the Star Wars trilogy, and then that's when I made a complete flip, and I was like, that I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna be that guy one day, and I thought I was gonna do it with film or video games, which didn't really work out, and so at around 2013, I had an idea for a story that had been swimming around in my head for a while. Said, why don't I just write this down as a book? Because I think one of the things that also influenced me at the time was Game of Thrones is really popular, and that was based off of a series of books. And then we all know Lord of the Rings is the same thing. It's based off of a series of books. And so I was like, why don't I write a book? And book because there's a certain purity to this form and a certain simplicity. I mean, at the heart of it, yes, it's just words on pages, which is it's pretty simple to do. But also, when I say purity, I mean they tend to be a little bit more timeless. An example is I've read, but like I'm actually reading a book that was I think was written in either the 1980s or the early 1990s. But when you read it, the movie I'm playing in my head is essentially like it could be today, like it could be a series that you see today. So, yeah, I've wanted to do something creative for my entire life. I'm finally now getting around to it. It's been a long time coming, and this is just the more I do it, the more I realize this is just who I am. This is what I was meant to do.
Excellent. And what do you do for a living just to get by? And how do you fit book writing into all of that?
So this is interesting. When I first started writing this book, I was working in construction, and so it was go to work during the day, go home, write for 2 hours, rinse and repeat for the week. In 2020, I had enough savings that I actually quit my job in construction to pursue this full time. Uh, but also between 2020 and 2000 this year, I was working part time in construction just so I didn't blow through my savings super fast. And also, I was working in like part time because I was trying to find a literary agent. And so I was told all these things like hold off on the marketing, just find the agent, do a bit of writing on the second book on the side. And so I had all this time to kill, I thought, just to as I waited for the agent. So I thought like, okay, I'll just earn some money doing temp jobs in construction. But this year, all of that's kind of changed because in June, I talked with a marketing person who got basically just convinced me to get on board the self-publishing wagon. I had been looking for an agent for a year. I think I had sent out like 40 or 50 query letters and nobody was biting. Nobody like it's just I got rejected so many times. And so as of now, I'm using my savings to just live off of while I pursue this full time and hopefully after February 6th, I earn enough money that I don't have to worry about blowing through my savings. And so, yes, that's what I'm doing currently at the moment.
It's not an easy life to be an artist, burning the candle at both ends. I know what that's like. Sapien Empire. Tell me about that book.
My book is a post-apocalyptic slash dystopian story where civilization is making a comeback. I could go into the story, but I don't want to give away too many spoilers. One thing I could do is I could just give everyone a little bit of the backstory of the book. So, what makes one of the aspects that makes my book stand out is the cause of the collapse. So my cause is a little different than everyone else's. So in most post-apocalyptic, it's what's called a singular event that causes the collapse. So nuclear war. Everything's fine. Suddenly, countries fire nukes towards each other. Everything goes to crap, and that's just it. Also, like I know The Last of Us and Walking Dead are popular, and so that's virus outbreak. Suddenly, just like overnight, the world goes to garbage. And my book's a little bit more complicated than that. So I deal with the civilization not going out with a bang, but a whimper. And so the backstory is over the course of the 21st century, as the world's population started to increase and resources became strained and climate change became a problem, you just start seeing a breakdown of society. So, like, like NATO dissolves, the EU dissolves, people start emphasizing locality more than this globalness. And so, um, eventually, like, countries break down into the states, and the states break down into cities, to the point that by the time of the early 22nd century, the world is really just a patchwork of these city states that for the people within the city state, the standard of living is pretty decent, because sometimes when a society collapses, there can be parts of it that they actually start getting better, even despite everything else around them going to crap. So the world's a patchwork of city states that have a fairly good standard of living, surround basically in seas of chaos. Now, that wasn't enough to get to the level of decay I wanted, and I wanted to add this really interesting event I call the all silence, which, as I describe it in the book, it's an event where all electrical systems got fried and the sky was filled with luminescent colors of green, blue, and red. And that was, as I call it, it was the bullet to the head of an already dying corpse. And so
Mhm.
that's the cause of the collapse in my storyline. It's a lot more involved, just
Yeah.
because my story is more involved. It's all about making the world a better place. But uh, one of the things I'll say is our world is complicated. The systems we put in place are complicated, and so fixing a complicated system requires complicated solutions.
Mhm. Smart. I like that angle. Singularity versus a slow decay. Your story is much more realistic. And I think that would make it even more frightening, especially for younger generations to face the 21st century. And so, without getting into your book description, don't give it away. How did you do your research about what future history is going to look like?
And this is something I found out recently. I think for me, it's helpful to sort of just write down questions and statements about the direction you want to go. And so what I wrote down is I wrote down, what do I like about post-apocalyptic? Like, what appeals to me? Because after all, I'm writing it. I have to have a good time writing it. Uh, what is appealing about post-apocalyptic in general? Um, what are some of the ideas you're taking into this and applying? And so I've always liked reading history and just sort of some of the accomplishments of previous civilizations. And so I wanted to have an element of that. But if I have the element of that, I don't want it to sound historical. It has to sort of fit the genre and the world that I'm making. And so I had really come to settle at the idea of city states, just because it's sometimes what happens when civilizations collapse. I think the best example is a lot of the Italian city states after the Roman Empire went away. Plus, the thing with city states with me is that if I want civilization to come back, I have to have a ember of that still existing, or else it's just not going to happen in the time span that I want for the series. And also, city states, I like settling on that idea because it shows a contrast with the areas of decay outside, and so
Yeah.
it plays into a larger part into a lot of the contrasts we have in real life between factions of people that have different politics, for example, different ways of life, different ways of saying things. And usually for me, when I find that I keep coming back to a certain idea, if I keep settling on that, that's the direction I'm going to go. That's what I said. Okay, this is I've agreed upon this. And that's I guess you could say the broader world. Now, in terms of specific technology, again, coming to the world building, that's city states was just a broader uh trend that I wanted to have in my world. But in terms of actual technology, I did have to do research on, given what the Pacific Northwest has, what could it realistically make in terms of uh technology, because sometimes you find certain elements that you would need for your society, they actually come from very far away. And if you have no longer have international shipping routes,
Mhm.
you have to take that into consideration. But I do remember I had my first draft, I had written a scene that was like I had dead set myself upon it. I was like, that scene I'm gonna have, that is definitely staying in the story. And so it basically involves this machine the protagonist makes. And so I said to myself, given that he's able to make that, what does that imply everywhere else? And so you say, okay, well, he has to have a knowledge of metallurgy to make that. He has to have a knowledge of how to make a diesel engine, basically, because it's what operates the machine. He has to know about hydraulics and pistons and fluids. And so they have to have the means of making those systems in place. And so from there, I just said, okay, it implies all these other things. And that's what I set myself upon. Now, with that being said, I wouldn't say I'm completely done with the story because it is civilization being rebuilt across the planet. The story building and the world building in general is a work in progress. It's ongoing. Whenever I get an idea for something, I just usually decide to put that into the next regions coming up within my story series. Um, yeah, and that's exactly how I came. I that was the research process I did, and that's how I figured out what my world's going to look like.
Mhm. Mhm. What do you think is the reason for so much post-apocalyptic um, stories? I happen to like them. You know, in the 80s, we were scared of the nuclear war back then. So it's been with us, but it's a little different now. So I'm wondering, what are you thinking about?
I think there's basically two broad camps of post-apocalyptic, I call them. So there's the first camp, which is the people in the story have knowledge of the previous world. So the examples I gave, Last of Us, Walking Dead, obviously people had lives before the zombie outbreak. And then there's another camp where it's so far after the collapse that those people really have no memory of the collapse, except it's kind of shrouded in myth. So again, my favorite example to mention is Mad Max, especially Fury Road, when they have the cult of V8, where it's just like a steering wheel, but I mean it's been elevated to this like level of religion. There's that, and that really appeals to me. Like I like what to me in post-apocalyptic, it's especially the world, and what really kind of strikes me is when you take something very mundane and sort of just something we take for granted in our world, and it gets elevated to the level of religion in their world. So I won't use the Mad Max example, but there's another post-apocalyptic example. Like I can't remember what story it's called, but basically it's this post-apocalyptic world where the episode of The Simpsons, Cape Fear, is like revered almost like their Bible, and they keep like making interpretations and plays and reenactments of it.
Yeah.
So it's something like that. And it's also it's the idea of seeing our civilization the way we see the Romans or civilizations that have come and gone, where it used to be this modern, vibrant metropolis, and now everything's just in decay and it's been overtaken uh, by nature. And that's just me specifically. Now, in general, I heard that what makes post-apocalyptic appealing is it's the idea of something bad already happening. So, like a lot of our anxieties and our fears are just sort of relieved through it. And there's also a sense of freedom and just taking charge of your own life and just going out there and being wild. Almost I kind of get into this into my book, but I think at the heart of it, it really appeals to a lot of our fundamental evolutionary traits. So if you look at most post-apocalyptic, it's small bands of people. Well, go back 10,000 years ago, we were all hunter-gatherers as small bands of people, and we had very strong connections with the people that we lived with because they were essentially our friends, families, and coworkers. There's also a certain degree of simplicity too that's associated with that, which I think also post-apocalyptic appeals with. I mean, in post-apocalyptic, it's find food, shelter, and protect yourself, which it doesn't look like a world I'd want to live in, but it's also pretty simple as opposed to our world where it's like, well, I got to go to work and I got to have this meeting with these people, and I got to file this report, and I might be working late. So now I got to call my wife or my significant other and say, hey, can you make dinner tonight? And oh, wait, my dry cleaning at the laundromat's going to close at 8. So now I got to go there and drive there. Oh, but is there going to be, it's just all this
Yes.
information, these factors, and
Yeah.
life feels very complicated today compared to, again, I think post-apocalyptic, where it's just like, essentially like if you work an office job and then you're in that environment post-apocalyptic, it's like it I don't think it would be that great, but there'd also be this idea of, oh, those investors I was going to meet with, well, now I just don't have to do that anymore because
Mhm.
there's no more banking systems. And so
Right.
also, and I think post-apocalyptic is becoming a lot more relevant today because, as I've told you, in some of as I told you previously, I said it's a long, slow collapse. And so when I say to people, when I repeat what I told you earlier, sometimes people say, like, oh, so basically what we're seeing right now. So, like,
Exactly.
there's a sense right now that's very pressing of
Yeah.
society is collapsing, and it's not collapsing because of something out of our hands. It's just collapsing, or it's on the decline because of human behavior and the decisions we make. I think that would be another reason why it's popular and I think timeless and appealing to people nowadays.
For sure. Yeah. It's simple, post-apocalyptic societies, grinding your own wheat. But then you have to watch out for the bad people. There's always going to be bad people who want to steal your stuff, and then city states fight with city states. I assume there's some violence in your book.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have an advanced reader copy on Book Sirens right now, and when I posted it, they said, "What are the trigger warnings?" There was like 8 of them, and I checked off all of them. The violence in my book is based on, I guess you could say, events from my life and just what I've seen or what I know of the world. And unfortunately, I do know that the world isn't all candies and rainbows, that there are very brutal people out there, that there isn't really a depth that humanity won't stoop to. It is a reality I don't like, but it's also a reality I don't deny. And also, I do have it just because I want you to get saturated and sick of it to the point that you finally like it when somebody decides to do something about it. The point where
Mhm.
somebody says, like, enough is enough. I'm gonna stand up, go outside my comfort zone, and really work at preventing this from happening again.
Yeah.
So yes,
Cool.
I there is, and I don't hold back.
Yeah. I also take it that character development was a big part of your story. The individuals, are there many characters in there that we can warm up to and identify with?
Yes. So I think the character, the protagonist, you will identify with them, especially if, like me, you were this awkward, nerdy, kind of loner teenager that didn't really understand society, your place in it. But also you again wanted things to be better. Uh, Now, on the other hand, with the antagonist, if you're one of those people that you just like power and you just want to have all your heart's desires pursued, there definitely is that. But I also have a fair amount of strong female characters in my story that all pass the Bechdel test, and I think people will really like that. I've been told I have really good depictions of that. I do have a lot of strong female characters in my stories because I myself want to make the world a better place, and I think one way you can do that is by helping women, essentially, and doing what you can to make the world a better place for them. So, uh, yeah, I'm not, I don't go crazy quite yet. I'm not like George R. R. Martin
Mhm.
characters, but there is enough that yes, there's someone for everyone.
Good, good. Sounds very inclusive. You feel really good about how it worked out?
Yes, I think anybody who decides to pursue creativity and wants to constantly keep improving themselves, that doesn't have an ego, is very critical of what they've made, and maybe to the point that they feel like nothing they can do can make it better, that no matter how many times they iterate, it's always bad. I do like the old adage that sometimes you can't finish your work so much as you just abandon it. And so that's basically, don't wait for it to be perfect. Just understand that you did your best and get it out there.
Mhm.
So I obviously was on the fence when I first finished it, but ever since getting it out there and showing the book to people, and oh, by the way, I do have, wonderful show up, the actual physical copy with
Oh,
me that I
okay.
got last week.
Cool.
Yeah, just sharing it with people and putting it out there and having people read my ARC copy. My feelings about it have definitely gone up, and I do feel I'm very proud of myself for where I've gone. I do feel great, and I also understand that as um things are going good right now, but I'm also not done yet. I'm just getting fired up.
Yeah, you got 7 more books to write.
Yes.
I guess you've started your second one yet?
Yeah, yeah. I've started the second one. I've almost done with the first draft, which I'll finish by the end of this year. And then the ongoing plan is, once I have people beta reading the first draft of the second book, I'll take a breather. But then what always happens is, as soon as I take a breather, I want to start thinking about the next process. And so I'm probably gonna start planning out books 3 and 4 while I wait for feedback from them. And then once enough time has passed, I'll just take the feedback, go back, do a second run of the second book, and then obviously get that ready for its release next November.
Okay. All right. Now, self-publishing or hybrid publishing even still requires an author such as yourself to spend money on editing and, well, data readers, as you mentioned. How has that affected your pocketbook? Is that a difficult thing for you to pull off?
It's hard for me to answer the question difficult, because I don't approach this with the words challenging, difficult, or easy. There's just simply, what do I want and how do I go about getting it? And occasionally something's thrown my way that really makes me question, do I still want to pursue this? Uh, I do try to go free or low cost whenever I can. So I know there are beta groups out there that they won't charge you money. There are podcasts out there that won't charge you money to be on there. But I do have savings I'm living off of. I do understand I'm taking a risk. And so there have been times in which I've had to shell out a certain degree of money, and I've been a little, okay, not really liking this. But I also think of this as, I'm creating a business, and this is the initial money you invest in a business. Now, if I tell you I'm opening up a restaurant, but I'm going to spend 80 grand first to get the restaurant up to par, hoping that in the future I start making a profit, also expecting that in the first year I'll operate at a loss until enough buzz has been generated about it. So I'll say this: I have gone through a significant amount of savings, uh, and sometimes would I say this is hard? Well, I would say I do get frustrated occasionally. I have found myself wanting to bang my head through the wall, scream at the top of my lungs, and throw stuff across my apartment just out of tension and frustration. But For the most part, I tell people, despite all the issues, a bad day doing this is still better than a good day anywhere else.
Hmm. That's a good mindset. I like that. Of course, I'm not going to ask you how sales are, well, unless you have some pre-orders. Do you have that?
So I've had people say they've pre-ordered it. I've checked my KDP so far. I have one pre-order,
Okay.
but that's something. Um, and I obviously hope to just get that up there and going.
Well, are you thinking about doing some book fairs or some readings, or is that something in the future for you?
Yes, actually, December 12th, I will be doing a book reading at VPL. And then I know next year with When Words Collide, I definitely want to sell my books there at their book booth. And then I also know that in the evenings, I think on Saturday, they have book author signing sections where they set up tables and individual authors will sell their books. I also do want to do meet the author at White Dwarf Books because I heard that was another good place in Vancouver, which is where I'm located,
Okay.
that I could sell to. Yeah, and any other book fairs or science fiction conventions that people pass my way and say it'd be a good place to go and introduce yourself, like, yeah, I would definitely like to go to those places. Those places are fun and exciting, and the idea that that's what you're doing to work is just like it's crazy, but it's like it's awesome. So
Of course.
yeah, that those
Sounds
are
like a lot of
yeah,
fun.
I definitely want to meet people, and I like meeting people and throwing my name out there. I was a little nervous at the beginning, but now I've got a lot more confidence with it, and every time I share it, I'm it's great. I'm just over the moon with it.
I'm very curious about your book. I just may order it in the next couple of months. Got a couple of books I need to get through and start writing my prequel to my trilogy in January. So I keep myself busy. But yeah, I really liked the sound of this book. I think this is something I could really get my teeth into. Hmm.
You should pre-order it, and you should tell all your friends to pre-order, and then tell their friends, and so on and so forth, so that I can keep doing this for a living.
Yeah, there you go. Where else besides Amazon do you plan on selling the book?
So I am using Ingram Sparks to distribute it, and I do know Ingram Sparks puts it on Apple Books,
That's a good company.
Gum, Kobo. I can't remember where else. It doesn't make it available so that if retailers want to order it from them and put it on their shelves, they can do it. And so, like, hey, why not? I'd like to be in Chapters or Barnes and Nobles one
Yeah,
day and just pass by the science fiction section and boom,
there you go.
there's my book right
There you
there.
go. Yeah,
And then
smart.
occasionally just walk in, and if people are there in the fiction aisle, just say, "Hey, I think you should read this book," and just kind of pull it out, and then they don't know who I am, and then I'm like, "Oh, it's my book," and then that starts up a conversation.
Hmm.
Might be a little awkward, but
Oh well,
whatever.
interesting cover. Who designed that?
I technically designed it, but I can't draw with crap, so I used paint to give a rough mock-up of what I wanted, and then I used Fiverr to find an artist and say, "Hey, this is an idea of what I want. Can you do it?" And then the guy, almost a week later, got back to me and said, "Here's the cover." And he did a really good job. I really liked it. And at first, I was like, I don't know, but again, you're critical of your own stuff if you're someone like me. But after showing a lot of people, I feel much better, and people not only like it, they're blown away. They like the cover, they like the name. They say it really stands out. It's really striking, and so I feel great. I'm really happy with the decision and the route I took with it.
Oh yeah. Do you have a website?
I do have a website. It's simply my name, nathanogloff.com, and on there you can find links to all my other social media and links for where to find the ARC copy and pre-order my book.
Okay. Looking ahead, you got 8 books. You're planning to have your second book out by the end of 2024 or somewhere
Mhm.
around November 2024. Have you sort of mapped out in your head when all 8 are going to be done, or is that just too far to think that way?
No, it's not too far to think about. I mean, I don't do things small, and I go super far. It's not that I've just planned out this series. I know the next two series I'm doing afterwards. So it does look like the series will be done almost 20 years after I got the initial idea to make it. And so books 3 and 4 are going to be in 2025 and 2026. I then, just depending on how much traction and momentum I have behind this, I might take that year, the next year off, just to give myself a bit of a breather while I plan books 5 through 8, because I already have a rough map of where I want to go with all this. It's just a matter of fleshing it out in more detail so that I have actual content to write.
Well, that sounds really exciting. You're so organized. I like that. You said you weren't a pantser. Neither am I. I need to outline everything. I call them synopsises. Otherwise, I don't know where I'm going. And that sounds like what you've got planned. 8 books. Good for you. I
Thank you.
would love to have you back on the show when you have more to say. We need to keep in contact because this is interesting stuff. Any last words you want to say before we say goodbye?
Uh, yes, everyone, pre-order my book. You guys are gonna love it. You're in for a wild ride. I also want to say, yeah, I absolutely want to be back on this show, and maybe around after the release of the second book. I don't know. And if I have more stuff to say, definitely I'll say
Okay.
more of it. So if you guys want to follow me, again, all my links are on my website. I post regularly, and yeah, definitely give me a follow and like and all that stuff so that I can get this on off the ground, because let's be honest, I'm nothing without readers and without fans.
You got it. Wonderful. Nathan, it's been a real pleasure listening to your story. Sounds so interesting.
It's been awesome to be here, man.
You take care, mate.
All right, cool.
Thank you for watching. And before you go, if you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and don't forget to ring that bell for future notifications. You can even leave a comment. All of that really helps in recommending this channel to a larger audience. And if you are an author, I would love to speak with you about your book. Until next time, keep on writing and be kind to one another.